So why did you pick Mayflower for your move?
Didn't want the hassle of dealing with a broker or little guy. Mayflower's been moving families for 100 years. They're a name people trust.
So they took care of you.
I'll say. Packing, custom crating, furniture setup, storage, all spelled out in the quote. Plus a move coordinator keeping us updated.
Sounds well worth it.
Big move ahead? You're in trusted hands with Mayflower. Local, long distance, and global. Get a quote at mayflower.com.
Yeah, alright. This is brand new. No one's heard this unless you're on the Patreon and you've heard it early. There's been quite a while since I recorded a new show. This one was going to go out on Threshold, but it never did, so it's still got the song intros in. The song intros probably date it, actually, to when it was recorded, because there's probably new songs that had just been released that were introed for it, but I'd never put it together with the music for the radio. Either way, this is going to be long enough. This is about 3.5 hours long, mate, so I'm going to do it as a two-parter because it also buys me a bit of time. There's a couple of Here's Hows coming as well, which are new. Hopefully you'll enjoy this. It's all the fucking hidden messages I could find in Toy Story, and there's loads, mate. They're really trying to like mess with your kid's brain and make him scared of extra-dimensional entities with this one. It's a very strange film if you've never watched it. So hopefully you enjoy this. We're going to do My Cousin Vinny next. But till then, here's part one. I thought this week we could look into some of the hidden messages I found in a film just to help us slip back into it. And this is a film that was a big part of growing up as a kid. I used to watch it quite a lot. And as we're going through it, it might come across that I've watched it quite a lot. It might make sense as to why I see the world in a certain way of, like, you know, there's interdimensional creatures everywhere and demons everywhere and things like that. And the idea of, like, you know, the quantum physics or quantum mechanics idea of things don't exist if you're not looking at them. That's that sort of idea. Probably comes a lot from this film. It's a film that's still doing well now. You know, they're still bringing out more of them, churning them out. To be fair, if you go on like the Disney Plus, they've made shorts, they've made films, they've McDonald's toys from it as merch, which makes a lot of sense. There's all sorts, man. Some guys even put one of the main characters up his arse, and that's a very popular image on the internet. It's a story all about American culture, past and present, the fabricated parts of American culture like the Wild West and reaching the moon and astronauts and other things that are just from the land of make-believe that this film helped to solidify in people's minds. It's a tale of merchandise, mates, and an awful lot of music by Randy Newman. This week, we're going to find out what messages were concealed in the 1995 classic animated film, Toy Story. But before that, let's have a song, and this is Papi Thunk, which is P-A-P-I-T-H-B-K, with Why Am I Waiting? Now, it's been a while since I've watched a Disney film, and it feels like they've updated the castle at the beginning of the film here, you know, in the little introductory thing where the firework or the rocket gets blasted through the castle. But I remember reading ages ago that castle's supposed to be a depiction of the castle from the Hollow Earth. So you'll remember a while back about the Hollow Earth. And the one that Hitler and Walt Disney were allegedly planning to rule over us from, to rule under us, but metaphorically over us from. And which will go a long way to explain the weird system of rivers in the background and the unusual looking sky above the castle. I usually ignore these production cards at the beginning of the episodes because they're usually unrelated, but this was Pixar's first release, and I think it's got some significance, like their card. We all know it, you know, the lamp jumping up and down on the letter I until it's flattened and gets destroyed. Now this feels like it could represent a couple things, innit? Maybe it's to prepare children for the idea of themselves or the quote individual unquote being eradicated as we slowly creep towards a socialist dystopia. Maybe it's even more sinister and slightly less obvious though. Maybe it's to prepare children for individuals being replaced by machines. For example, self-service machines in Tesco's or Asda and Aldi, or the automated cinema booking phone line that used to exist before we could do it on our phones. Not long after this film came out. They're just a couple of examples of how people have been replaced since Pixar released this film. Maybe maybe it's got something to do with people becoming enlightened and explaining that as people become enlightened, they'll no longer be themselves. It also feels like it's worth noting that this lamp's either using unlimited energy or is battery powered to some degree, as there's no wire coming off of it, which might seem like I'm nitpicking, but look at all the battery powered stuff coming about now with no wires attached to it. So maybe it was a ploy to help boost sales of batteries, just like the very film itself, because I imagine if anyone's investing so heavily in a film that's just a story about literal merchandise invented for the film, then those investors are primarily going to be battery manufacturers like Duracell, Panasonic, them ones, Kodak, the ones that sell the ones from the pound shop that last about 10 minutes. Kodak are probably behind it anyway. George Eastman seems to have his hand in everything, doesn't he? Immediately, right, as the film starts, we're shown a blue sky with clouds, but there's an edge to the sky, right, which is suspicious, and after that edge, everything else is grey. Now, not to ruin the film, but a big line in this film is to do with the limitlessness of space, yet straight away here, we're being shown that there is an edge to space, or at least the very sky itself. That edge isn't the sky touching the grey either. There's a prominent white line separating the two, separating the greyness and separating the sky, possibly preparing people for the concept of flat earth, with the firmament, that thick glass dome that's supposed to be over parts of it, or the ice wall, whichever camp you sit yourself in amongst the flat earthers. We then get a little play out of some kind of a kid holding a Mr. Potato Head whilst trying to rob a town made of cardboard, but we can extrapolate from this easily quite, and then this is only seconds into the film, mate. Mr. Potato Head is a vegetable, right? Not as in, like a fella in a hospital bed eating through a straw while eating intravenously. Nothing like that. I'm not being horrible, innit? He's a vegetable with arms and legs and eyes. He's Mr. Potato Head. For those of you that don't know, I'll give him a Google. Don't be envisioning, like some Stephen Hawking fella. The kid's not there with a little, like, model Stephen Hawking smacking his head off of a wall going, oh, now you make sense, nothing like that, right? And Mr. Potato Head's robbing money directly from a pig and a lady called Bo Peep, who's a shepherd. Now, could this have been how veganism got its gritty little claws into children's minds early on? People my age, people probably your age listening to this, veganism's just getting into the brain, seeping in there, rotting them from the inside, mate, like potato blight, just destroying the little heads. And it's making them accept the idea, albeit subconsciously, that it's okay for Mr. Potato, aka Big Chip, to take away the livelihoods of farmers, even taunting us to show that there's nothing going on with vegans. It is real. It's all existing in a fabricated world. What we're seeing here, maybe film producers have always wanted to make kids stop eating meat. That way, the other companies that fund the production of children's films might be able to take the land from underneath the farmers' feet, in this represented by the pig and Miss Bo Peep. Then, Mr. Potato threatens Bo Peep's sheep. He threatens them with a car, though. Now, this might be the start as well of indoctrination against cars and personally owned vehicles, as we're forced towards a more public transport way of life. Get the bus, get the tram, get the train, ride the bikes that they've tied up outside of police stations and fire stations, and near bus stops and that. With everything I keep seeing as well about 15-minute cities at the minute. And now if you're listening to this when this goes out as a podcast, that might already be a reality. We might already be living in this dystopian future that I'm predicting here. If so, I hope not. And hello from, a few 15-minute cities over. Now, if we had to, maybe we could say this was the turning point that allowed people to accept that when they are older, they're not going to need a car, because by then they're going to believe that cars are going to be bad for the environment, because here in the film the cars are being used to hurt the sheep. Yet at the moment, back in 1995, they only believe that cars are bad for the animals, as we're yet to be sort of informed, if you like, about man-made global warming. I don't think Al Gore's really come out yet as a global warming guy. I don't know what the word would be for that. As a propagator of the theory, of man-made global warming and that we're all going to die, man, bear, pig, etc., etc. We then see a police officer, a sheriff, more specifically, but he is pre-programmed speech within him, and he is literally controlled by another person, right? This could have been the corporation's way of trying to turn the youth against the police. He also says, reach for the sky in a very cowboyish manner, which I'm not going to do, because, you know, we're looking at this from a very objective point of view. You know, we're not trying to be funny, we're not trying to poke fun, we're trying to be objective. Now, this reach for the sky quote could have been a way to cause the record levels of depression in people, subtly telling people to try and go for the goals just so that they can fail miserably and then be reliant on medication for the fucking rest of their lives. The kid then talks about something called a one-eyed Bob, which feels kind of rude, you know, like he's alluding to a penis of some sort, and he even finished his sentence with a, "Are you going to come quietly?" And it could be these underhanded little sex references in kids' films that led to a lot of kids having kids in the mid to late noughties, like that girl from my school, which we're not going to name. She was alright, but, you know, she was young and she had a kid. And you probably know some as well. You might even be someone who had a kid young, and that could be because of Toy Story and other things in films, you know, like, off the top of my head, I can't think of other kids' films because my mind's in Toy Story. We then see that the police officer, which is a puppet controlled by an unseen force or entity in the eyes of the other toys, relies on a dinosaur to keep the people of his town in check. Now, if you think back a couple of years ago to the dinosaurs episode, we learnt that dinosaurs are probably just a made-up means of controlling us as people, as a populace. So, were the makers of the film trying to tell us this back then, or were they trying to say that if you're going to listen to the police, you also have to believe that dinosaurs existed, which is, you know, something that affects nearly every person in the world, because nearly every person that has faith in the police probably also believes in dinosaurs because they've really bought into the indoctrination and into the world, you know, into what people tell them, what society is and what society believes and teaches. We then hear Woody, the sheriff, that's his name, Woody, for those of you that are uninformed. He says, "You're my favourite deputy," whilst he's looking down the camera at the audience. What he's doing there, mate, is fucking priming a generation of grasses. Trying to make it acceptable to shop your neighbours in for minor offences, smoking weed in the garden, maybe, you know, nicking dust caps off bikes and trying to flog them on eBay. Bits like that. People that don't cut the lawns in America to the right height. That's what he's priming them for. I feel like there's a bit of a nod as well to known child trafficking too, from the song choice, because the song is "You've Got a Friend in Me," because it's saying about how they're miles and miles from the nice warm bed, which seems like a really mental thing to say to a child, doesn't it? How often really is a child in a situation where they're miles and miles from their nice warm bed, in a situation where it would be relevant to talk about their bed, unless you're fucking that child miles away from home? Because if you're out and about and you're talking to kids in the street, you don't bring up their bed, do you? Because you look like a fucking nonce. You're like a weirdo if you talk to a child about their bed or about their pyjamas. But here, within the first 2-3 minutes of a film, they're singing it to kids about their beds and about how they're going to be miles away from them. Maybe in camps, internment camps. Maybe they're just going to be in a shipping container somewhere waiting to get to some foreign minister's house where they're going to get, you know, rattled. Anyway, the whole song does sound a bit like something written by Nambla, with lines like, "Some of them may be bigger, none of them are ever going to love you the way I do. It's me and you, boy." So it's clearly a man speaking to a child that is some form of unspeakable distance away from its own home. But what if we take what's going on here a little more literally? The children watching this are hearing a television, tell them that nobody's going to love them like the television loves them. Priming people to trust the TV and not the parents. Priming people to trust the TV and what it tells them in the years to follow. There could even be a little bit more going on here. There's loads of stuff about cuckolding on the internet and the whole alpha, beta, male thing and cuck dynamic. Here is one of the most successful children's films, a groundbreaking film, and it's got the lyrics, "You've got a friend in me," which are the exact words a woman would probably say to her husband as she cuckolds him with his best mate after a certain mutual friend's barbecue or whatever situation it's happened in. Not so much anything to do with kids, but further down the line, you know. Everything that's on the internet and that. I even had a weird message saying that. I've been getting weirder and weirder messages. Getting a little off track here from my notes, but I have been getting weird messages. And I've had 2 people in the past week offer to allow me to penetrate their missus. It's not their missus getting in touch and asking. It seems to be the blokes. It's weird. It's an odd thing. But anyway, getting back into the film, I was I was also wondering if this film might be responsible for some of the ADHD traits, ironically, getting off topic there. The traits that we see in Andy, in kids. And so Andy, the child who's in this film, is the godlike entity of the film, Andy. He's constantly bouncing around and shouting, which isn't how I was taught a good boy acts. He seems pretty naughty in my eyes, isn't it? He's chucking his toy around the house and screaming, and he's wearing his trainers inside as well, like a reprobate. Yet he's still getting a birthday party, mate. Something that kids will have seen when they watch this film and taken on board into their little minds. Right? They also mention that they'll be moving house soon as well, which that's a traumatic experience, innit, for a kid, that. Now, most of the time it's a traumatic experience. I had a mate growing up who literally moved one house next door, so for him I can't imagine all that much changed, except maybe a huge inconvenience for his mum and dad having to change all of the letters over, but they could just go and knock on next door and say, sorry, I gotta grab them letters, I've not done the gas board yet, or, you know, whatever else. Pensions, I imagine, because you only hear from your pensions every few months, don't you? And I've already gotten distracted here. They say that he's going to be moving house soon, so that could be associated with the man-boy love, you know, the Nambla stuff alluded to in the song, in a sort of MK Ultra sort of way. But, you know, because it's trauma, they're initiating trauma in the child in the film, and the child's being shown to have power and things like that. But they would usually do a lot worse to a child than make it move house. They'd normally at least lead with rape, you know, before they beat the child. The kid would be raped within MK Ultra. That seems to be widely accepted. But this film came out a few decades after the start of MK Ultra activities, so maybe it just evolved with the times. Maybe they thought, you know what, this is mental. We're MK Ultra in all these kids and teenagers here just to get them to use some of the burlier ones to rape some of the younger ones. What if, right, now bear with me, what if we get some of these burlier lads here, instead of getting them to rape the young kids, which isn't doing anybody any good really, because we're not really using these MK Ultra slaves that we're making and these sleeper agents. What if we just get some of the big ones to start a removals company, and we'll really market it with using Hollywood? We'll market it instead of doing all this child rape stuff. We'll just market moving house. We'll convince women that they want to do their houses up and sell their house and move house, and then we'll use these big lads that we've MK Ultra'd in the moving thing, and that'll traumatise more kids faster. Because think about, we could move, if they're in the local area, we could have a team of 6 vans, and that's 6 houses a day. Whereas we don't really have the warehouse space to be raping all these different kids, because we've got to dress up as aliens and kidnap them, and we've got to do all this other stuff. There's a lot of work around it. Whereas if you just make them move house to a good distance away, we'll get a bit of money. We'll invest an awful lot of money in different firms that hire a lot of people, and then we'll be like, oh, we're shutting down here, but we're going to move you all to this town we've built, like fucking that guy with the flamethrower in Simpsons. What was his name? The guy that everyone thinks Elon Musk. It'll come back to me, but you'll probably know who I mean. The guy who's like a James Bond villain with the ginger beard. But maybe they just did that. Maybe they just started a removals agency with all the MK Ultra lads to traumatise more kids. The mum, right? The mum tells Andy as well to go and get Molly, because his friends will be here soon. Now, Molly is obviously a street name for MDMA, right? I know that's a bit of a jump there, going from the house removals and that, but could there be more subtle drug references throughout the film? Could there be more little things introducing? Because you and as well, if a teenager's watching this in the mid-90s with their younger brother or younger sister or something, just think about that. Drugs was mad in the 90s. Mandy and fucking ecstasy was a very, very big thing in the 90s. Could this be a little nod to that, to prime the teenagers' heads to go, fucking go and have a couple pills, lad, after this? You've been a good lad. You've sat through this with your younger brother. Your mum and dad like that you've come here. You've had some popcorn and that. Now, you've not had too much popcorn because you didn't want to ruin your stomach. Go and have a couple pills. Enjoy yourself, Anyway, let's have a song. This is Royce and Reggie, obviously by Royce the 5'9" and Redman. Andy, right? Andy could be viewed as delusional, as he keeps speaking to all these inanimate objects. Then he pulls on Woody's string, and the sheriff says, somebody has poisoned the water hole. A fear that many people still have to this day, right? There's loads of people worried about
water and what's in the water. Mostly a chemical called fluoride. That's what most people are worried about, especially most people our age. You know, everyone that I'm aware of is worried about fluoride. But I don't speak to many people. I mostly just, sadly, as sad as it sounds, I mostly just speak to myself. I'm very worried about fluoride. Now we get a closer look at the fake buildings that Andy's made as well, and we can see that Andy isn't illiterate, but he also isn't completely literate. He spells words phonetically with a capital F, basically. Words like general are spelt general. So instead of it being general, he's generally spelling them wrong. So he's spelling it Generil. Just as one example, I can't remember the others. We then get a quick introduction to each voice actor that's doing a read in the table, you know, for the film. And as the screen cycles mindlessly through the characters saying things that add fuck all to the story, really. It just seems to be a way to get, you know, the guy from Cheers, so everyone can go, it's fucking him, you know. I can't remember his name. But there are, you know, a few throwaway lines about how the dinosaur's trying to be scary and it wants to intimidate people. There's a line that associated pigs, more specifically ham, with being uncultured, which seems like another way to turn children away from meat. You know, the idea of, eating ham is an uncultured thing to do. You should be eating vegetables and seaweed and bread, you know, things like that, but not with, you know, obviously not with hamming. There's also a little bit in this section to ready the population for false flag events as well, or at least the belief in false flag events in like a, you know, I think the concept is auto-hoaxing, where people think, that's immediately a false flag. Do you know what I mean? And that might not be the case, but it's a lot of people believe in false flags, and a lot of people automatically assume things are false flags. Because Woody challenges an Etch-a-Sketch to draw, and it draws a fake revolver, and Woody pretends to be shot by it, even though Woody knows that gun's not real. And we know Woody can't die. It's just all these little bits, like when you look at these films retrospectively, we can see all these things. We then see Bo Peep trying to seduce the copper, offering to get someone else to watch the sheep, which feels like it might be trying to say that someone can lure the police away from doing their jobs and be tricked into doing something else. Maybe a way of saying the food industry is backhanding the police, you know, or in this case, Bo Peep will probably just be, you know, giving ham shank to the copper to distract them. But in a more metaphorical sense, an allegorical sense, it's saying now industries can pay off the institution, if you like, the police, the government, in order to, you know, don't look at this, go and do that, you know, things like that. Again, it's harbouring this distrust in the police, in the minds of the children, trying to just enjoy this kids' film, you know. And we then meet a new character that's this living radio, I can't remember the name of, with a microphone attached to him. Mike, I knew it was a fucking stupid... Anyway, but because the toys are all alive, all it's really showing is that important announcements, like the one Woody is making in the film, aren't going to come direct from the leaders. Instead, they're going to speak through someone else, through a spokesperson, in this case, Mike, the living microphone. Maybe we need to view Woody as less of a copper and more as a leader. Maybe he's like the Prime Minister, the President, the King, the Queen, you know, whatever you call the leader of your country, wherever you're listening. Now, Woody speaks of a plastic erosion talk from last Tuesday, which seems very similar to coastal erosion. Now, the part of Mike's role is hammered home because he doesn't instinctively follow Woody to spread his message, showing us that there's a chance in the real world that our leaders and politicians use their own puppets without the puppets even being aware that this is happening. Like, I might be a puppet and not know. Someone might be putting all this stuff in my head, making me say these things to use in order to spread some form of message or to try and make me look mental so that yous won't listen to the things I've got to say. I wouldn't know, you know, and you wouldn't know if you were being used by these people. Now, I'm trying to stay clear of, within this, the realms of this, for at least for now, the extra-dimensional entities, but you could view this as the extra-dimensional entity being Woody, and Mike the microphone is a person in the real world, and the entity's tethered itself to Mike using the cord of the microphone wire in order to exact its will on Earth on the humans, you know, and maybe even the animals, but probably just the humans. Saying that the extra dimensional entity is trying to affect animals is probably a bit of a stretch, you know. We then see that all the toys are panicking over the unknown. They don't know what's in the boxes that Andy's guests are bringing, you know, into the house, and that, because obviously it's Andy's birthday party, like I said earlier on. Now they don't know if there's new toys in them. Then Woody says, if I send the troops, will you all calm down? And they all frantically say yes, because they've been whipped into a frenzy, innit? They're scared, they don't know what's going on. Oh, is there something in the box? Is there a man in the cave? Is there a bomb? Is there a this? Is there a that? You know, they haven't got a clue. And then this, perhaps, perchance, maybe, a prelude to the problems that we supposedly had with Saddam Hussein. Everyone got whipped into a frenzy about weapons of mass destruction. Then they sent the troops in to try and calm everyone down after the media scared everyone, saying there's nukes, there's weapons of mass destruction, there's weapons of mass destruction. Dead Sea Scrolls, there's weapons of mass destruction. Then, years later, we find out through various sources that politicians knew there was no weapons of mass destruction. Now in the film, we can guess Woody is just as nervous at being replaced as all the other toys are. But he's the leader. And he doesn't want to show that he's scared, and that his overlord Andy's he's more than willing to replace him in order to be able to affect the world around him, you know. And he wants to send the troops out, but he doesn't want to see him weak. Then he sees the perfect excuse to invade the house and perform a bit of reconnaissance, all without alarming the toys. In fact, it's actually quite calming for the toys like Rex and Ham and Bo Peep. This was potentially all a way to ready the children of the mid-90s for what has so far been a lifetime of war on terror. We hear Woody tell the sergeant that it's a code red and that the sergeant already knows what to do, implying, right, that the war in Iraq was already planned before the politicians of the real world gave the go-ahead, because we're seeing it in Toy Story. Now, I mentioned global warming earlier, and we get another little bit of predicted programming here. As the soldiers climb into a plant to hide from a ball that sort of rolls past, we can see, which again is hide from the ball, you know, don't pay attention to the ball so much, you know, maybe a little thing about flat Earth, but probably not. I think I'm reaching there. We see a sign that came with the plant that reads Forest Fantasy, maybe alluding to all the stuff about the Amazon in the late 90s that was forced down at least my throat at school about how it's all going to be destroyed by the time you're 15, or when you're 16 we'll have burnt all of Brazil to the ground and we'll have destroyed the entire Amazon rainforest, Amazon, all this stuff about Amazon, which obviously hasn't happened. It's still there. We also used to get told a lot in school by the teachers, maybe twice a week, that the Amazon's going to be destroyed and then we're all going to die because of that. Now, I went to Catholic school and they do rule with fear, and maybe, you know, it was just that school, maybe they were bad teachers, maybe you didn't experience this, but I did. It was constant, all this stuff about the Amazon's being cut down and set on fire and it's not going to get replanted, and there's going to be too much oxygen and there's going to be too little carbon dioxide, there's going to be too much carbon dioxide, there's not going to be enough oxygen, there's going to be too much nitrogen in the ground, all this mental stuff that you just don't understand. It's going to kill you in a few years. Yet here we are, you know, nearly 30 years on. Now, all the toys were scared that they'd be replaced, innit, by the other toys that could be coming in these boxes, sorry. But they're disappointed when they don't get replaced by the toys, which was weird, innit? Like, that's a weird thing to show kids. Oh, you're scared you're going to be replaced by, as you probably know, a spaceman. But not to, you know, spoiler alert, but, you know, they're scared they might get replaced by the hypothetical spaceman. But then when they don't get replaced by the hypothetical spaceman, when actually what's in the boxes is just a lunchbox and some bed sheets, which seems like it's a way of saying with the real world, oh, there wasn't actually any weapons of mass destruction, it was actually just a load of old scriptures for magic spells and stuff that we'd lost from thousands of years ago, and everyone goes, oh, well, that's nowhere near as good, that's nowhere near as scary, I don't understand, why did you even bring it up so much, you know, like that. It's almost teaching kids that they want to and need to live in fear, and they need to experience disappointment, that's all they should have. Now, we know that the army men are talking about a spaceman, because we can see the spaceman on the screen as we're watching, but the toys don't know this yet. Then the dinosaur, Rex, the big green fella, shakes the table out of frustration, which disrupts the message reaching the population from the army people. It distorts it. So Mr. Potato Head calls him a big lizard. And I couldn't help but think, it was this in relation to lizard people, or the species of creature from the Draconis star system being responsible for altering the news. They're the ones who are like, you can't say this, no, you can't say that, say this instead. Don't tell people about France, don't do this, don't do that, don't tell them about Taiwan, don't do, is that about a little bit about that? Because we did learn in the Lion King episode all those years ago that these extra-dimensional creatures feed off of negativity. Maybe the truth about a lack of weapons of mass destruction would disrupt their feeding ritual. They wouldn't be able to feed on the negativity because everyone's just going to go, fuck for that. We're not gonna die in a nuclear blast, And then all these entities are going, no. We don't want this. We don't want hope. We can't feed off hope. I mean, you need a little bit of hope, though, to breed the disappointment and the fear, because if people aren't living in hope, but say someone's living in hope is just another way of saying they're living in fear. It's a much, much nicer way of saying it, innit? Because if you're saying, I'm full of hope, that means everything's shit, but I'm hoping it'll get better. Well, I'm using hope to describe hope. Everything's shit, but I really want it to get better. Whereas if you just say, everything's shit, but I want it to get better, it all depends on tone, innit? That's still hope, but you're still kind of in fear and sadness and that. So that's fine for the extra-dimensional entities to survive. They need the misery. They need the fear. So they stopped the toys from knowing exactly what was going on. And by doing so, they've kept them in the dark. Then we see that the toys struggle to use technology that has been interfered with by the so-called lizard. Could this be a way to commentate on how the reptilian species of aliens has messed with the technological advancements of the world? Could it be a way to show a lack of opposable thumbs, meaning that this film is an allegory for our distant past, our very own distant past? Could it be a way to try and sneak more batteries into the film to appease the potential producers we mentioned in the introduction? Maybe it's just a way to add a little bit of drama to the film. Maybe it's a way to try and demonise the lizard people, a species that may have been trying to help humanity. Like we saw in the first few seconds, whilst Rex was aiding Woody with the arrest of Mr. Potato Head. Maybe the lizard people came to Earth during the American Wild West and they introduced loads of new technologies and societal advancements in return for tasting the fear of human children. A weird thing about Toy Story, though, is it's very self-referential for things that didn't really exist back then. As in things to do in the Toy Story universe, almost like it's a film brought here from an alternative reality, because you hear a kid say, take that Zurg, but Zurg was never introduced in this film. Zurg wasn't introduced until the second film, and even then not till about halfway through or so, I don't think. And then it obviously was built on a lot more 15, 16 years later in the Lightyear film. There's no hidden messages here unless it's a sort of weird Mandela effect nod, like, oh, look, you already know about Zurg, they already know about Zurg. That split second of kids' feet stamping about as well is to further the script by bringing the toy to the toys. Like, they run in, all the kids just run into the room where the kids are and then all run away and leave again. Almost as if, because if we look at Andy as a god, then we've got to imagine that the other people are gods and these entities, and maybe them entities were here bringing the next advancement, the next evolution down to the toys, which are the humans in the real world. It gets confusing when I talk like this. But that little throwaway line about Zurg seems a bit weird, innit? Now, the toys are discussing Woody being replaced, and maybe that's an allegory for how Americans program their population. For years, it was John Wayne, westerns, guns, revolvers, just filmmakers throwing enough sandy shit at walls and seeing what stuck. America and the world just lapped up the westerns, but these fantastical tales of an era of America that probably never even existed got replaced by futuristic stories of an America in a world that will probably never exist either. Sci-fi was born, spacemen pretending to land on the moon, spacemen in films, the building and or arrival of the moon, aliens, monsters, Doctor Who, Star Wars, it's all in there. This could be a way to show how the big they planned or indeed used culture to control and sway the opinions and beliefs of the American people and therefore, through the success of these films, the world. Let's have a song. This is Chill Bump with the eponym. the first time that we see Buzz Lightyear, we also see a shooting star in the background. Now that shooting star's got 4 different colours coming off of it and a globe, which may be a possible way of introducing the idea of rainbows, which seems like a very prevalent idea and what's the word, like symbol in modern day culture. Whether it's a way to reference the LGBTQ plus community or the NHS in the UK, there's no denying, and even like fucking zebra crossings. Some places have changed zebra crossings to multicoloured things, so then they're not really zebra crossings, but it's probably still not acceptable to just keep driving when you see someone standing at it. It just seems that they're important to whoever or whatever seems to now be in control of us in 2023 as I'm recording this. There's something about it, because they've been everywhere and they're more and more everywhere. And there was even in a game called We Happy Few, where everybody's on medication and these people are on drugs and everything around them's horrible and miserable, but they've painted everything bright and colourful, so when they're on the drug everything seems nice and cheery, but in reality it's all quite miserable and grey and dystopian, but everything is coloured in bright colours, so it affects the drug and the mind of the drug taker, and because the drug takers in the game are normal. But we're getting very off topic again here. Now the globe in the background, and it's seen with Buzz Lightyear, it's got its own background of it's got clouds behind it, which just seems like a nice way to further cement the idea that the Earth is a perfect sphere, or a so-called fact, if you like, still believed by most people today at the time of recording, as I say, in 2023, which, even though the Earth is not a perfect sphere, we know that this year, and they probably knew it back then, I would imagine, but now it's more believed, it's mostly accepted now by most of the population, I would say, that the Earth's closer to the shape of a pear, or an oblate spheroid, I think the name of it is the scientific name. So imagine like a sphere, but then it's been sort of squeezed in the middle. Like if you get a tit and you cup your hand in like a C shape and then squeeze the tit, instead of the tit being nice and round, it goes into what looks like maybe a hot dog bun shape almost, with not with an actual crease through the middle like a hot dog bun. I suppose it would depend on the boob, innit, but not the actual Earth. The Earth doesn't have a crease through it like that, but just for the sake of understanding what that shape is, more like a rugby ball, I suppose, but still round at the sides rather than to a point. I don't remember what I was on about. Buzz Lightyear. Oh yeah. Another little weird symbol in this scene is Buzz Lightyear's got a little spiral on his chin. Right, now I don't know an awful lot about it because I've not read into it yet, but we're going to cover stuff like this in later episodes because it's becoming more and more prevalent. It's being used in more stuff, spirals, and I'm more so getting into symbols and things like that at the minute, and things like that rather than aliens so much. Aliens seem to be dying a death for me in my head. It's more, what are they hiding in front of us? What's hidden in plain sight? But these spirals seem to be one of the ways it's alleged that the paedophilic elite of the world signal to each other and spread messages to each other. But that's made me wonder if it's more like they're spies, if you like, the paedophilic elite in bunny ears kind of thing. Are they actually paedophiles and are they actually elite, or is it just a way to refer to spies that exist in our world without calling them spies? In the same way that they used to use newspapers to spread messages to spies behind enemy lines or in deep cover. Maybe now TV shows and films are used, and there could be hidden messages in the dialogue of films between, the displaying of certain symbols. Maybe in 30 seconds time within the film, there's going to be another spiral or a picture or a shape shown on the screen, and that shows the viewer the message has ended. The message was hidden within what you've just heard there. Write down every word that's just been said in the film and take the third, they know, or it's the third letter of every film, or it's like like a sequence thing, so it's the first letter of the first word, second of the second, third of the third, fourth of the fourth, and things like that. And that might spell out a location to go to, or a name or something that they've got to look for. Maybe, I'm not overly sure. For example, with a circular spiral, that the word could be, because, or and that's maybe it's a code word instead of a shape. Once the character says because, that means right, boom, that's the end of the message. So the message was after the spiral and before the because, or a square spiral. Or it could be a phrase as well, like happy to say, and then the receiver of the code notes the first or third letter again of each word in the speech and writes out the message. But that's just an idea, isn't it? It's not really grounded in any research at all, just as an idea that keeps running around my head, and I really want to look into, think about that a lot, of trying to figure out what's hidden in things. And it's not doing my head in, but it is taking up a lot of my time. Now, we get to see Buzz's point of view as well in the film, and we see that he sees everything in the world through a screen from which he can see his own reflection. Now, this was made a long time before smartphones were available, so it seems very suspicious that they'd include this, unless it was to make people accept that their reality is filtered by something that's going to show their reflection. Now we know that them things that show our reflection are phone screens, unless it's more of a physical thing to say that each of our realities are shaped by ourselves. We see the reality, we see ourselves in reality, so the reality that we see is a true reflection of what's in our mind. As in, like, how they say, like, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and that it may be that's in that sense, if you've got a nice mind, you might see people as more attractive, which I think is what that means. So that's probably why simple people seem to have a lot of kids, because they're very sexually attracted to people that other people might look at and go, fucking hell, they're dog rough. Who's shagged them once, let alone had 8 kids with them? To what appears it could be 10 different men. Do you know what I mean? But maybe it's that saying, beauty in the eye of the beholder. These people who were very nice, very friendly people, lovely people, do anything for you, salt of the earth, just look dog rough. But because they're so nice, they see the nice in everybody else, and they really want to throw one up Fat Brenda from a few doors down. Do you know what I mean? And they can't wait to come home to their wife and, sneak out over the back fence and rattle the neighbour who's, overweight and, walks with a limp and all this other... not to say there's something wrong with overweight, but I'm trying to build the image in your head of, it's weird, isn't it, that our realities are shaped by ourselves, and they're showing that in the film by showing reality from Buzz's point of view, and Buzz is staring at himself in his own reflection. So he's literally seeing himself in what he sees, which, if anything, shows that my head is puddled, because if my brain's the one showing me all of these hidden messages and conspiracies, then that means that's all just in my head. But if it is all just in my head, then why is it all there in front of me? Do you know what I mean? It's like a weird, what's the word? Ursarin, cyclocene, no, the Ouroboros, mate, Ouroboros, the snake eating itself. Anyway, besides the point. Now, in the same way that Buzz's face reflects in everything he looks at, he's also getting reminded of his own existence, something that seems to relate to modern day as well, where most people seem to obsess over things like mindfulness. Now that's a practice that keeps you in the moment, supposedly, according to the weird people out there, like teachers and that propagate it to the masses, when in reality all it does is if you actually try and do it, it just makes you feel really frustrated and pissed off, which is probably the point of it, because they're trying to tell you it's very calming, and then you're doubting yourself because you're like, this isn't fucking calming. I'm really angry because I don't like this person's voice. I've got someone with a very posh voice telling me what to fucking do, and I don't like that. Why can't you have someone with an accent talking on this thing, rather than having some fucking, someone who sounds like they work for the BBC? That's to make you doubt yourself. That's the only reason your teachers are probably doing that to you. I would have thought that's what I used to think at uni anyway, when they tried having me doing that at uni. Anyway, Buzz speaks to himself by using a button on himself. Now, that reminded me a lot of myself and my Patreon, which at the time of recording this in 2023, only about, I think, 15 people are signed up to, and I'm actually recording this on a video for them, and they get to watch it for $1 a month or $3.50 a month, and if you're listening to this thinking, you know what, I'd like to watch this guy's face as he's saying all this stuff and seeing how he moves his hands to depict stuff in front of himself so he can carry his sentences on, then, go and have a look, patreon.com/worldaroundyou. But there's not many people signed up, and you get loads of stuff. But again, I'm getting distracted. But what if this is all just, the speaking to himself like the button? What if this is all just like the Little Mermaid, in the sense of This is just a way to teach the extra-dimensional entities that inhabit us as children that they're now cut off from Star Command, in quotes, you know. The Buzz refers to it as Star Command. He's pressing a button going, shh, come in Star Command, and nothing comes back. Now, that's what they call it in the film. But you can imagine Star Command could be what... They're not hippies. We don't really have hippies anymore, but these esoteric people on YouTube and that, they all call it like the universal oneness. So now it could be a way for the film to teach the more enlightened souls of the extra-dimensional entities that are now taking over the children's bodies, like we learned in what The Little Mermaid taught us about. The Little Mermaid was to teach extra-dimensional entities how to literally use their bodies. You've got to use your legs to walk and jump and move around and things like that, and you've got to collect things and buy things here, otherwise you'll stand out as an alien and no one will like you, and no one will be into you, and you'll be weird. Don't be weird. Buy stuff from worldaroundyou.com. But this universal oneness that it's claimed that we're all from, if these entities know of that and they're now in a person, this is teaching them, by them pressing a button and saying come in Star Command, this is teaching them that doesn't exist anymore. That connection's been cut whilst they're here, teaching them that they're now on their own on Earth, or the third dimension, if you like. Then our attention gets brought to the fake wings of the spaceship, which is just a cardboard box that Buzz arrived in. Now, on each wing of that is very, very close to an SS symbol, which is a kind of reminiscent of the Nazi forces SS, but also because of the picture of a missile in between them, it feels a little bit more like it's a symbol for hospitals and ambulances in America and some medical things in England, you know, with that stick or the spear. I don't know if it's supposed to be like the spear of Longinus that they stabbed Jesus with on the cross, and then it's got a snake wrapped around it. It's a little bit like that. You know, it's not exact, but you can, if you look at it, go and have a little look now while you're listening, and you'll see what I mean. Compare the two. And I remember reading that symbol is to do with some form of Saturn worship, or at least a reference to Saturn that other worshippers would notice, but I can't remember exactly what it is. Now, could this SS symbol be how they've hidden the message? Was the message in the clip since the spiral and ends at the SS symbol? You know, is that what happened there? And have we missed it? So what I'm going to do is what I've done is I've made a note of all of the words since that spiral appeared on the screen, and then until the SS symbol appeared on the screen, right? Now I'm going to tell you that quote, or even repeat it to you, so you can make notes of it as well and try and work it out yourself. And then we'll see if we can work out what the message is, okay? So the quote is, Buzz Lightyear to Star Command, come in Star Command. Star Command, come in, do you read me? Why don't they answer? My ship. And then it cuts out there. Now, ship is said during the transition from Buzz's face to the box. Now, I'll give you the quote again. Buzz Lightyear to Star Command, come in, Star Command. Star Command, come in. Do you read me? Why don't they answer? My ship. Or it could be my like that, because as ship's being said, it shows the SS symbol. So what's the message? Now, what I've done here is I've took the first letter of each word we get. So that gives us BLT, SCCISC, SCCIDY, RMWD, TAMS. Now, personally, I don't think there's enough vowels in there to get a coherent message, but maybe those letters represent something within a form of cipher that the spies will have learnt, and maybe each letter depicts a word or another letter, and it's not that clear, because otherwise any idiot could pick this out. I've picked this out here without being a spy, so obviously I don't have the cipher in front of me. I don't know it. Now, if you have the cipher in front, if you can make this make sense to something, to spell out some words or make sense of whatever that could be, please let me know and show me the cipher that you made for it, because I'd be very interested to see that. I really would, right? But maybe it's a different message. What happens if we take the last letter of each word? If we do that, we get ZRORDEN, RDRDEN, OUDEYTYRYP. Now that one, I don't know why, that feels like there could be a message in there, doesn't it? Because of all the R's and the E's and the D's, there's just something about that one. Compared to BLTSCCISCSCCIDYRMWDTAMS, sounds a bit airy-fairy, but ZRORDENRDRDENOUDEYTYRYP repeats itself, doesn't it? That sounds more purposeful. That sounds like someone has hidden something within them letters. But again, I don't know what they are. And I did run it through a website to see what it gives me in abbreviations and if it means anything. And there's nothing coming through apart from you can make out the words ordering drones, order drones comes through, but without a cipher, that's not all the letters. But that's the only real message you can get from words that make sense that you can make, and then there's leftover letters, ordering drones, which seems a bit relevant, given what happened in the following years, I suppose. But anyway, we get shown Buzz doing a report about the atmosphere and the world around him, and it shows him reading for gamma, except the meter isn't real and it doesn't move, which could be a subtle way to show that gamma is something that's made up, maybe as a means of keeping people afraid. Gamma radiation made Bruce Banner into the Hulk in Marvel, and I'm pretty sure it's what defrosts frozen chicken after about 5 minutes on low in your kitchen. But for something that's so dangerous, why do we have it in our homes and make it simple enough for children to use? Now, a child can't really spark a gas oven, but he can use a microwave, innit? Which can blow up a house, a microwave. Gas oven, a gas oven could blow up a house as well, I suppose, but it's probably easier to make a microwave explode. But that's regardless of the radiation. We then see that Buzz tries to assume control of Woody by referring to him as local law enforcement, and then he tries to pull rank on him, possibly in a way to show that our police forces are controlled off by some form of off-world entity. Maybe something resided in the Black Knight satellite, which we will do an episode on, possibly a short one, but we'll cover. Though there's no reason to think that from this about the Black Knight. There's nothing to show that. Could be the moon as well. Could be that there's things in the moon controlling the police force. That's who's in their earpieces, like in Truman Show kind of thing. But something I'd like to draw attention to here is the toys don't seem to be awake whilst they're boxed up, which is pretty weird because no one's looking at them while they're in the boxes, but they're not alive. Only once the box is opened, and even then they're only active when they're not being looked at. It seems like they have to be activated. It's weird, almost the opposite to how scientists currently believe electrons act, which seems maybe that's purposeful. Maybe the whole thing about electrons that we're told might not be true, or it is true, but they're using films like this to make us not believe it. Buzz asks if we still use fossil fuels or if we've discovered something he calls crystallic conversion. Crystallic conversion? I've only written it down. I can't remember exactly what he says. Again, it sounds radioactive. It sounds scary. It sounds quite futuristic, quite sci-fi. Possibly a way to, prep the younger viewer to accept the idea of nuclear power, maybe. Gently planting that idea that fossil fuels are outdated, need to be replaced, that we shouldn't have them. Now, Rex meets Buzz immediately after talking about fossil fuels, which is suspicious. And he comes in, he says, after Buzz says he comes in peace, Rex tells him he's glad that he's not a dinosaur, which feels like the makers of the film are sort of suggesting that reptilian aliens don't come to Earth in peace. There's an alien here saying, I come in peace, and Rex is going, I'm glad you're not a lizard, because we already know they're a threat. That's what it's saying here, and then it's putting this in kids' heads, mate. It's mental. And I think there's probably some significance to Woody being from the Wild West era too here, and the arrival of a spaceman, but we're going to see where the film takes us. Now again, we keep getting the word gamma rammed down our throat whilst Buzz explains he's from the Gamma Quadrant. There's also reference to something called the Galactic Alliance, which sounds very similar to the name of an organisation I've heard an expert talk about in an interview with George Norrie. Multiple people talk about in things with George Norrie and with Art Bell over the years and that. And there seems to be a nod to a lack of self-awareness as well. All the toys are stating where they were made, but Buzz just repeats what's on the box he came in, which I suppose the other people are kind of doing, but they know a little bit more about themselves. For example, Ham might be saying, I was made in Taiwan, and Rex might be saying, I was made in Taiwan, and Woody might be going, I'm an American cowboy that was probably made in Taiwan, and so on and so forth. They probably all made there, I would imagine, seeing as that's where we get most things made, even though now it says a stamp on it saying made in China. Again, different subject, not really for here, possibly something more for truth seeking, which you can also find if you want to go and listen to truth seeking. Now, it seems that by repeating what's on the box, it's like he's been brainwashed in it to repeat rhetoric and to not think for himself. They also say he's covered in gadgets as well. And it started to look like Buzz is some form of representation of people from right now, which would be the future from 1995. It's weird, man. They just say what they're told to say. It's like an inflated self-importance, and they're heavily invested in technology. If you wanted to get really conspiratorial, you'd notice as well that he hasn't taken his visor off yet, which acts as something that stops the outside air getting to him, but also covers his head like a helmet, something that conspiracy theorists and media analysers are predicting for our not-too-distant future, to protect us from things the experts are calling space junk that apparently keep falling down to Earth, which is what they apparently refer to the Black Knight satellite to as well. Now that's categorised as it's just space junk. We learn that Buzz is delusional, though, as he doesn't know that he's a toy, whilst the other toys are very, very aware of it. Yet he's completely oblivious to the world around him, and he's very dismissive of Woody as he tells him, he's a toy. Because it seems to mirror a lot of conversations that people might have in the real world, in like reality now, and in 1995, but in the real world with people, not toys. Whether it's a discussion about religion, aliens, or maybe being some form of meat puppet for CEOs. For everyone in the world, there's an uncomfortable truth that they think someone else won't acknowledge. We then hear the line "to infinity and beyond" for what I think was the first time in the film, or at least from Buzz anyway, which is pretty oxymoronic, innit? Or is it to ready your children to the concept of other universes? Truly, the only thing beyond our infinite universe would be another infinite universe. So maybe instead of being a space traveller as such, maybe Buzz is a physical representation of transdimensional entities. The idea of him being some form of djinn or demon gets solidified, in my opinion, when he's challenged to fly. A feat that he should be able to do on his own, but he can't. Instead, he bounces around loads of different things in the room, in many ways giving the illusion of flying, but it's said that the Archons can only use other people's ideas and not come up with their own, so this could be a representation of that. He wants to be able to fly, but he can't actually do it himself. He's got to use all these other things to be able to do it. So if flying was a representation of an idea, he then implements it by mimicking flying. But let's have a song. This is Unpredictable from Static Selector with Raekwon, Ghostface, Method Man and Inspector Deck. Everyone starts bumming off a Buzz for the way he pretended to fly around the room, which is what I imagine would probably happen if an alien or an interdimensional traveller came down to Earth anyway. That new entity would be praised and held to a really high standard almost immediately because they're different, probably even worshipped by people. Mr. Potato Head at this point is already asking Buzz to teach him his ways, which seems like a good way to start a religion, if you like, and maybe it's what happened when the aliens came to Earth and gifted the Indians with cattle and the Americans with corn. These things were probably already there, maybe in the way of DNA, and then the aliens just manipulated that DNA like a magician with long balloons, Oh, it's a sausage. Oh, now it's a dog. Oh, like fucking Robin Williams. Oh, and fucking wrapping these balloons up and being like, oh, it's a flower. Oh, it's a sword. But the balloon's just DNA, and they're just using the same thing, twist it round in a different shape. Boom, still a balloon, but now in the kid's head. Now it's a dog. You know what I mean? Maybe that's what the aliens did, and what Buzz is being shown to do here. Well, maybe it's what the aliens did with cattle and, things like that, corn, just to be able to impress the indigenous people of the lands that they'd arrived in. Now, that's just a hunch, innit? That's not based on anything. The aliens did introduce cattle and corn, but Quetzalcoatl introduced corn. Can't remember the name of the deity or the alien or the god or whatever you want to call it that introduced cattle to the Indians. But there is some form of evidence for that. We've actually covered it in a previous episode. I just can't remember which one. We then see Andy, which is the representation of God with a big G God, top G God, or the creator, if you like, of this universe. He uses Woody and uses the spaceman to irradiate the sheriff. More than that, though, we now see Andy start to dress like Buzz to change his appearance to be in fitting with the new style. Maybe this is what the gods of old or the alien visitors do when they come here. Maybe they arrive, dip their elbow in the cultural bath, get a good gauge of what's popular, of the temperature of the culture, what's hot, what's cold, that's just about right. And then they present themselves in that way, as a spaceman, as a cowboy. Maybe the concept of this isn't that new. Maybe it's something that shape-shifting reptilian races of aliens have been doing for millennia. And that could be where we get the phrase social chameleon from, right? It makes sense, doesn't it? Because a chameleon only changes its colours a bit. It doesn't really blend in. You can still see a chameleon because it's fucking mental eyes. But a social chameleon is someone who changes and adapts to each, what's popular, what's going on in the culture around them in that very moment. Maybe like the reptilians can do. Now we get a little look into the indoctrination of a child's mind as well here. We see the posters on the wall read ABC Roundup, which is to do with Woody. They're then replaced with Buzz Lightyear posters, space imagery and military-like paraphernalia, rather than teaching them, how to read and write and work on farms and to look after themselves and raise food, like Roundup suggests. It's join the military, it's guns, it's rockets, it's missiles, it's things like that, it's space. This seems to really illustrate the idea that a child is taught a way to learn the facts that will be given to it and nothing more. Like young Andy's moving through a checklist set by his superiors as a child. You're taught the alphabet, then you grow up, you're taught about space and science using the very foundations of your early learnings. The alphabet was all real, and you can easily apply it to everything in the world as long as it's in your language. You believe that the teachers are telling you because you can see that, yes miss, A is for apple. But does that really mean that space is real? That Jupiter's out there as big as the fucking moon, huge, and that the moon is just itself is just hangling above us, not even with a string, mate, just waiting above us, and that the moon's got absolutely no intention of killing us all, just pretending it wants to kill us all by altering the levels of the seas, just teaching us that the moon's just taunting you by raising and lowering the seas. All this stuff about global warming, but no one's ever saying, the moon's just trying to show us that it can kill us at any moment, mate. There's nothing about that. You never get taught anything like that. You have to go out and find stuff like that, mate, to know that. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, I think it's time for this week's Here's How. Quite quickly, more of the world around Woody starts to change in order to be able to idolise Buzz. And we then see Buzz altering the dinosaur Rex as well. Now, a long time ago, we learned as a listener group, as a people, we, as in me and you, listener, we learned that dinosaurs might not be real, and Buzz is doing everything he can to make Rex more intimidating, and I would also argue more likeable, which seems almost synonymous with the word acceptable. The public are more likely to accept that giant lizard creatures were aggressive and scary, rather than believing that they were friendly and dopey. But this shows another way that Buzz the Traveller is interfering with reality, and maybe a way to represent that dinosaurs were made up as part of the same lie as space travel in an infinite universe. We then see that the lie of space travel, or the shift in society in the room, is used to influence the other toys, and the other toys all start working out. Something that, as an activity, I've always been quite suspicious of. We covered some of that, though, about my suspicions about working out in Dodgeball, I think, in the Dodgeball episode, so if you want to go back to that, and you'll hear some of that there, I think. But we can touch on a point raised in other previous episodes as well. The anti-dog policies that seem to be scattered throughout these films. Like at the start of the Hot Tub Time Machine, we see earlier on in that, in that film with the dog groomers and stuff, they're trying to make you convinced you shouldn't have dogs. But we see at the start of this film as well, Woody and Slinky the dog are pretty good friends. But as Buzz starts to make more of an impact, Woody starts to turn against Slinky. And we're shown Slinky hitting Woody with his tail, and he slaps him off the bed, trying to get people ready to accept the illegalisation of dogs. While Slinky's distracted by Buzz and what he represents, Woody falls off the bed, which seems another indicator to me that they, the big they, are looking to take our dogs off of us. Just look at who breeds dogs. Most of the time, people breeding dogs are working class people and farmers. And those are the sort of people that our governments of the world always seem to target. We then see a very alien looking Andy neglect Woody and replace him with Buzz, which solidifies my earlier thoughts about how some entity using spacemen and space travel to control people rather than the lessons of the Wild West now. Now the Wild West taught people personal freedoms and exploration, but space travel implies that we're meaningless and it's impossible to travel because you need loads of equipment and you'll never survive because it's infinite and it's to infinity and beyond, you can't do it. And at this point, Randy Newman keeps saying that strange things are happening to him and there's no doubt about it, which seems like a very convenient way to say everything I've just said, but in a very lyrical form, in order to really cement it in the viewer's mind, in the child's mind, to mess with the kid's head who's observing this film. Buzz says to Slinky and Rex that it seems like he's been accepted into their culture after he's been branded by Andy. This feels like it could be a racist thing about how religious practices cause a permanent mark to their followers, but it could also show us that the space traveller Buzz represents some form of an insidiousness and that he did everything he could in order to be accepted into the community so that he could infiltrate it properly and keep making these subtle changes, which on the surface seem like improvements, like David Icke's idea of tiptoeing, that is his idea of a totalitarian tiptoe, possibly. It's just a way of showing that. So does this mean that Pixar are on our side? And they're showing, look at the fucking dangers of improving things and changing things. It's all little gradual steps. Or is it a way to make us accept these things because most people probably wouldn't spend 9-10 hours watching Toy Story, stopping it every sort of 30 to 40 seconds to write whatever they're seeing on the screen. So people wouldn't be aware of these things. Maybe a way to display the thoughts of giving up rights for securities. You get little bonuses like a watch that tracks your steps with a screen on it, but you can also read the news from that watch. But at the same time, that means that Big Ben always knows where you are and how fast you can run. So they can now send out the repurposed and specially bred dogs that they've confiscated away from everybody, and they'll know which breeds they need to send after you whilst you try to escape. It'd be a waste of time sending Alsatians after fat people if they could just send 3 Jack Russells out of the back of a Fiat Panda. They don't need the big fucking cage then for the German Shepherd, do they? They can save the German Shepherd for the athlete, but they can just send out the smaller dogs for the fat people. It's something you've got to bear in mind, mate, and think about. Woody knocks Buzz's helmet off, and then we can see the effects of indoctrination though. Buzz pretends and believes that he can't breathe. Then he realises he can, and turns that onto Woody, the man who was the original voice of reason. We then see Buzz doesn't understand sarcasm, which seems like a way of showing the young people of the 90s that you should take everything literally and ignore irony as much as possible, which is something that we're seeing now in the world. No one likes irony really now. It's sort of frowned upon and not really looked at. You shouldn't say this, you can't say that, you shouldn't say bad things, even if you don't mean the bad things, you shouldn't say them just to be funny. Be literal, be everything's said with purpose, but as long as that purpose isn't for comedy to make people laugh. And now you might be listening to this thinking, this isn't made for comedy to make people laugh, and it's not. I'm making this to inform me. But, that's besides the point. Here's ours will make you laugh, hopefully. These are the teachers, so you learn something. Almost, it's odd, innit? It gets to be a bit of a grey area, innit? Because Woody shouts, "Look, an alien!" And Buzz believes him, and then Woody falls about laughing at him, which seems like a way to show you can follow all the rhetoric of the Star Command, if you like, or as we would call them, the big they. But you can still believe in things like aliens, little green men, as if it's acceptable to believe in that particular known unknown, but you can't question anything else, like the shape of the earth, or if there's extra dimensional entities, or is every door on a street actually leading to a house, or do some of them just lead to underground bunkers and hallways where other people and agents and stuff can appear in our world to affect us? You know, we can't question things like that, but we can believe in aliens, which is a weird little thing, isn't it? To have the known unknowns and they're all right. You know, it's just, I've always found that bizarre. We then get a huge bit of predictive programming, mate. We learn of Sid. Now, Sid's the next door neighbour, and guess what? Guess what he's got, mate? He's got a barking dog. Aggressive seeming barking dog. Now, the dog is made and animated to seem scary. Another way to try and make children of this new generation scared of dogs, so that they'll accept the government taking the neighbours' dogs in their own future. But even more than that, we get shown a military man with an explosive device attached to his person. Now, as a child, I remember believing that there were, let's call them undercover soldiers, with bombs attached to them everywhere because of the news and TV shows. I believed as a kid that there were people from other armies knocking about everywhere with bombs, right? On buses, trains, public areas, car parks, woods, wherever. Now, it's probably because of films like this, like Toy Story. That's probably where that's come from. You know, hiding these sort of things in them, these themes and these images to get them in my mind. Because why else would I start to think as a kid that there are people with bombs attached to themselves everywhere you look and go? You know, it's weird that they made you believe it was on buses and trains, whereas now, you know, they don't want you to be scared of buses and trains. They want you on buses and trains now. They want to force you onto them. They want to take your cars off you and things like that. So it's weird how times change, innit? Now, obviously, I'm being sarcastic. I'm pretty sure I learnt that from the news. Maybe it'd have been a lot harder to believe this stuff on the news, though, if I hadn't have been primed by cartoons like this at a younger age. According to the news, these people with bombs were always of a certain persuasion, and they were used to unite, if you like, the then, I suppose, current as well, superpowers of the world against them in a war, which was referenced earlier on in the film as well. And now, as it's paused and I'm was taking these notes I've wrote down here, I can see Woody and Buzz momentarily sharing the binoculars to share this view. Now, you could argue that means there's a one world view, a united view amongst these two different in people, these different in ideologies, are all looking at the same thing going, now that's the enemy. We're not each other's enemy, but that's the enemy there. Whilst we're seeing Buzz and Woody both share through this view through the binoculars and showing that they maybe got the same idea, we're actually shown that Buzz thinks that Sid's happy. He thinks the kid seems happy, whilst the other toys in the room show they already believe what their current superior, Woody, believes. Again, this is showing us a level of indoctrination amongst the toys. And now I imagine what's going to happen is they're going to convince Buzz to think like them. Probably punish him for not thinking like them as well. Whilst all this overt brainwashing is in the foreground, there's a rip-off of an army recruitment poster in the background of these scenes that says, I want you to join Space Rangers, which is very similar to the I want you, Captain something, was it fucking, it's not Captain Tom, that's the old fella that ran round his sister's garden or something, his daughter's garden, and his daughter allegedly did stuff with charities or whatever it was, but can't remember his name. It's the guy with the white hair and the blue costume. It's a rip-off of that anyway. Now, that seems to be prepping the young people at a time to be very accepting of a new war and to encourage them to sign up to this war and either literally sign up as sign their body away or to just accept it and sign on with it. We're like, yep, that's the war for now. We had World War II, Vietnam, Falklands, but now it's the war on terror, right? And I'm all for that. You know, that's what the kids are thinking by seeing this poster in the background, potentially. Then, the soldier gets blown up, and Sid shouts, "Here's history!" As if to say, it's all true, and it all happened exactly as it's recorded in the books, which is something many believe to not be true about the war that followed this film in what was supposedly for the search for the Dead Sea Scrolls, or, as it was publicly donned, the search for the weapons of mass destruction. There's then a very obvious nod to modern times, but we need to take in everything from the past 10 seconds to appreciate it. We see a group of people in fear of their neighbour, and a soldier with a bomb attached to him. Then Bo Peep says, "The sooner we move, the better." We then see the house is sold, but above that we see for sale and virtual realty, right? Which almost reads as virtual reality. Maybe a very subtle subconscious way of forcing people to believe a life in a virtual world could be better than a life in the real world. Yet it's also a nod to the sale of virtual property that people were doing during lockdown. Where's that gone? You don't see anything about that anymore. People buying these virtual plots and things like that. Now, there's something for the pedo fans as well now, for the fans of a paedophile. Andy has Buzz and Woody bouncing off each other whilst his mum comes in and says all this packing is making her hungry. Typically, the word packing is used as a homophobic slur aimed at blokes that enjoy anal sex with other blokes. I'm not a user of it myself, but so it's queuing up a sex reference basically. It's bowling a sex reference to the bat, if you like. At someone that bats, you could say, for the other team, but we're not going to say that. That's not something we would say here. Again, we're very much based in fact here with this, but we have to remember that this is a child, innit? And Woody and Buzz act like adults. Plus, they then go to a place called Pizza Planet, which seems like a very, very solid reference to the Pizzagate theory, which I'm too nervous to do an episode about yet. So we'll probably wait off on that. Maybe we'll touch that a bit with truth seeking. I don't know. I would worry about going into that one on my own. We then see that Buzz is strewn onto Woody and is, ironically, riding Woody in reverse cowgirl, which the remote control car watches from a distance, which is just a weird little added in thing. We then see Woody use magic in the form of a magic 8-ball and it rolls away, as if Woody knows of magic and he's gone, oh, I can't let the alien know that we've got magic. I'm going to have to hide that from everybody. No one can know of magic. Then he looks at RC, the electric car, and he starts plotting against the space traveller. So could this mean that electric cars are going to be used to return us to a time like the Wild West? Could it mean that magic has been concealed from the space travellers and that their cultish disciples is it to keep us safe? Is it to keep them from discovering it? Or is it a way of suggesting that the pizza parties are a sort of witchcraft where children get raped in order to harvest some form of magical powers? Who knows, mate? I reckon that's probably long enough for this week if you're listening on Threshold FM though, and we'll pick up with this next week. But if you listen anywhere else, we're just going to roll right through and see if we can figure out what Woody's implying happens to these poor defenceless children. Woody uses the excuse of someone being in danger and uses it as his opportunity to attack Buzz. Now, Buzz has to pretend to care about every toy because he can't drop this charade. A lot like how social justice warriors SJWs of the real world, except the toy in question is a magic 8-ball. Now, Buzz doesn't know about magic existing, but the 8-ball is black in colour and round, which could be a way to show how people may be able to retaliate against the SJWs by showing that they don't actually care about, the whoever it is they're pretending, whether it's overweight people, black people, whatever it is they're trying to get clout from on Twitter. Buzz makes a scene whilst he's looking for the ball, just like SJWs make a scene online. Now, they have to be seen to care, but they don't actually do anything that is caring. But before we carry on with it, let's have a song. This is Tech Nine's Tell Everyone. We then start to get some more flat earth stuff. Pins fall from a chalkboard like stars falling from the sky, but none of them, not one of them, hit Buzz, which might be a reference to Project Bluebeam and the idea of a virtual attack from the sky. Then the globe rolls after Buzz, chasing him, just so that people don't put the two things together. And as another way of solidifying the idea of a perfectly spherical Earth in the minds of children, something we know isn't true. Buzz manages to avoid the globe and isn't fazed by the Project Bluebeam style attack. And then a lamp manages to avoid the globe as well. And it hits him out of the window. That all appears to me to be very symbolic. After avoiding the Earth being the Earth being a sphere, he's hit with a light, or enlightened, if you like, enlightened in little bunny ears, and then he gets thrust out of the window. But the window, now that's the perimeter of the toy's known reality. So now Buzz is out of the system. He's not in society. He's not in reality. He's out of it. He's somewhere. He's been enlightened by this lamp that's twatted him out the window, right? After he's realised the Earth isn't where it's supposed to be, isn't what it is. It's something else. The Earth's come for him. He's avoided it. The light's knocked him out, and now he's not in the system. He's out of it. Then the other toys look out of the window though, and they say they can't see him out there, which is the first example, in this film at least, of a perception filter, like what I suggested the Greys have put in the skies around us so that we only see what it is our brains can show us. They've been shown that there is an outside world, they being the toys have been shown that there's an outside world, but they can't absorb it, they can't take that information in. They know that Buzz is out of the window, they know, they've seen it with their own eyes, there's something else. But they can't see it, they won't accept him. They can't see it because they've been conditioned not to see it. That's what the film's telling us there. You could take this in as once a person becomes enlightened, let's say, and aware of the real world, the rest of the people are going to ignore them and brush them off whilst pretending to care. Oh, you seem mental. Oh, you seem a bit, what's to do? Which could go a long way to explain the so-called mental health crisis. If you want to call it that in quotation marks, it might be the wrong thing to put in quotation marks, but a lot of people pretending to care about people, but not actually doing anything to help those people. Not really. And if they do, it's just enough to ensure that other people believe that they care about it. Now, before we get too political in that, Buzz falling from the window, right, might be in reference to the Nephilim, or fallen angels, maybe more so the fallen angels, if you want to call them that, creatures that seem to appear in our realm of existence, just like Buzz appeared in next door's garden, in Sid's garden. Buzz was kicked out of the realm of Andy's room by Woody, which is, possibly because Buzz uses technology and wants to use that technology to further the toys, whereas Woody doesn't want that. He don't want that at all. A little bit of a Garden of Eden reference almost as well, innit? Buzz has been kicked out because he's done stuff that goes against the leader being God. God said don't touch the apple. Woody's saying don't be teaching them to work out and stuff and better themselves. We don't want that. Get out, fuck off. Hits him with a lamp, sends him into Sid's. So what we've actually seen is Buzz taking the technology that he's got to a new realm where he may try to have influence. But we'll have to see what happens in the film, innit? We can't be jumping ahead. Now RC, which is the name of the electric car with eyes, can't be understood by the reptilian Rex for whatever reason. The others seem to. But Rex, the lizard, the dinosaur, he can't understand what RC. But Mr. Potato Head can understand every single word that RC says and translates it. Now this could be to show us that Big Pharma with an F, is in cahoots with electric car manufacturers. Maybe it's trying to tell us that Big Pharma is working alongside the electric car companies to take over land so that they control all the produce being made around the world rather than independent farmers, meaning if they have the land, they can use the spare land to build new roads and communities with electric cars in mind, meaning everybody involved makes a bit more money. Soon, there'll be sky rises of pig farms and electric charging carports every 3 miles so you can reach your destinations and bacon dispensers within 2 or 3 minutes, within a few, not much time at all. Maybe the farming elites and the electric companies, the electric car companies aren't in cahoots though. Maybe the cars aren't in charge And it's the farmers are manipulating the electric car companies, maybe through some form of political lobbying, or maybe just through all of the marketing and propaganda, making people believe coal and oil is evil, which seemed mental, right? Because it's easy to see within the next 100 years, people are going to be complaining about lithium supplies being low and the damage burning all the coal has been doing in order to produce the electricity to drive all these electric cars rather than just using petrol. Maybe the root of it all is the people that run the petrol industry refused to share the child that they were having sex with the local coal industry leaders, or maybe the petrol leaders flat out refused to rape children at all, and having learned that they can't be controlled with the temptation of children's orifices and tears, the other elites set out to turn us all against them and their business. But we're getting really off track here. I want to touch back on the fallen angel aspect of the film as well, because Andy's room has got clouds on the walls, and that can only be to symbolise that this is all taking place in a setting made to resemble somewhere higher up, a higher place of existence, where the Greek gods live, on the top of Mount Olympus amongst the clouds, in heaven maybe. We then see everyone apart from the dog turning on Woody, who has now become the bad guy in this scene through various things happening and him attacking Buzz to try and what he sees as defending his place and his authority and the people around him, the toys he cares about. And that's another bit of sly propaganda, isn't it, to turn people against dogs? Why else would they show the dog siding with the guy that pushed another fella out of the window? Now the dog is siding with the bad guy of the film, Woody's now the villain. And the dog's siding with him. This is more anti-dog rhetoric, more anti-dog propaganda being put into films for young people so that people are more accepting of the government taking people's dogs off them. Rex says he doesn't like confrontation, which seems to be quite true as well of reptilian aliens. By most accounts, they seem to be much more underhanded, slyly turning the tides in their favour from the shadows. Rex even backs off into the shadows slightly as he says this, which just goes to further my point, innit? We see a sort of mutiny occur now. Woody made the hard decision of eradicating an enemy that needed eradicating an insidious spaceman that's invaded his home, his territory. Then his own army, if you like, his friends, his army, his troop, turned on him, along with a talking piggy bank and a talking potato, both of which obviously symbolise the international banking cartels and Big Pharma, respectively. They then threatened to lynch Woody, showing who's really in control of the people. The bankers, the farmers, these people, they're the ones in control, not Woody. Woody's their puppet, if you like. They just take a back seat. They've got all the power, but Woody thinks he does. Woody's the mouthpiece. Then, all at the same time of this, the lady of the show, the house, the home, the realm, Bo Peep, quietly... not shouts, but it's quiet, but it seems like, what's the word? You quietly declares, stop it. As if to go, everyone's pushing people around and someone goes, stop it. Oh, don't do that. Like whilst covering their mouth and that so no one can hear him. A little bit like a social justice warrior on Twitter. Oh, don't do that, but let me, sit here in the comfort and safety here while I don't do anything. I'm going to pretend I care and do stuff, but don't do that, don't do it. She's the only character as well in the film so far with an actual usable weapon, a melee weapon in her hands. She's got that big fucking cane, mate, that shepherds have, that Jesus was supposed to have to hook round people's necks and snap the windpipes of the goats and stuff that shepherds use. I can't remember what it's called. It's like a hook, a big long hook, like a broom handle with a bend at the end, like a massive walking stick almost, but longer, so they can grip the goats. I think it's so they can grip the goats. I can't imagine why else it'd have a hook on, unless it's so they can, like fucking attach it onto wires and then rappel down, or what's it called when you go diagonally across like a ravine on a rope with a system with like a harness and that, whatever that's called. Maybe she does that. Maybe that's what shepherds do as well, so they can get to the goats, because goats go up on hills and that, don't they? Anyway, this isn't about Bo Peep. I'm sorry. She's shouting "stop it" as well, like still going "stop it, stop it now. Oh, stop it. She's in the crowd, though, and still moving towards Woody, so she's acting like everybody else, and no one knows she's shouting, which is a good way to teach kids about mob mentality. She doesn't want to actually go against the group, but just in case Woody can hear her, she wants to appear like she's going against the group, so she can say, well, I was saying stop, just like SJWs. Now, we hear Andy saying, I couldn't find me buzz, which seems like a way to train children to become depressed as well. A little subtle, little breadcrumb there to, you've lost your buzz, you've lost your mojo. Do you know what I mean? Like, you've lost your excitement, A little bit of depression there, so they can start to make money out of them when they're older and fuel what's become a recent mental health epidemic. We also see some numbers on the car which read 113, 113. Which are numbers that are heavily associated now with various conspiracies. Again, I'm not going to get into gematria, look for other people for that on numerology, because I feel like that's a rabbit hole that I'll never come back from. I look into it a little bit, I dabble, I like a little bit of it here and there, but if you fancy it, go for it, mate. But it's not really for me. It's quite confusing. And I feel like you can probably squeeze a lot into it. But there does seem to be a lot of use of the numbers 113, especially 11. 11's like an angelic number as well, and a message from something behind the veil, if you like. I don't know, which makes it seem like there is hidden messages within this if you was to look at it like that. But you see what I mean? You can bend it around as much as you want. I'd rather stick with sort of like the facts, like things that we know have happened since, which are being shown in this film, or things that are in lots of other readings and films and TV shows, books and dogma elsewhere, but is also being shown in this in the film we're speaking about. Now, we see the toys of Andy's room, possibly a representation, like I said earlier, of the gods or the creator species, or maybe even some form of galactic federation, like Buzz said before about the Galactic Alliance. Maybe it's the Galactic Federation using monkeys to try and get access to the world outside of this cloudy higher realm, because that's what they're doing in the film. They've got all these little toy monkeys where they hook into each other's tails and hands, and they're making a little rope for them, and they're using the monkeys to get from their realm to where Buzz is, right? Now, Buzz could be us, could be the humans, if you like. Let's say that. And where maybe Woody's gone out there, I'm not sure. I don't think Woody's out there yet, though. They're trying to get Woody out there. But they're using the monkeys, which is what people believe the Anunnaki did, what the reptilians did, what some species used monkeys, injected DNA into them, genetically spliced them. No scenes of the moon in this part of the film, no, from the top of my head. But it shows how maybe extra-dimensional entities were able to interfere with monkeys, or even evolutionarily speaking, something lower down in the realm, in the pecking order of evolution, maybe billions of years ago. Maybe they experienced time differently. They just go in, slip something, do something to interject with an amoeba to be able to make something in billions of years' time from that amoeba, be able to interact with their realm so they can enter us, like what I said in the Little Mermaid film, how the Little Mermaid was about extra-dimensional entities entering children's bodies and using them as meat puppets, and it was teaching them how to use the bodies. It just seems everything's telling us that. Every kids' film seems to be telling us something about either gods or aliens interfering with us and using our bodies and trying to get into our reality. That's what a lot of it seems to be. Because it's scientists as well, man. Science, and not even not just the scientists, actual other scientists as well. They believe we evolved from monkeys, and conspiracy theorists, like I say, they believe we were created by aliens and they mixed their DNA with apes to make us, or how some people believe the extra-dimensional entities forced evolution on our planet to make some form of bipedal creature that they can use as vessels to traverse the Earth and our dimension in order to be able to make changes to what they call, I think, the light or something like that, because supposedly the Earth is like the centre of the universe and it's a very important, I want to use the word chakra, but that's not the right word for the universe, a meridian of power, if you like, supposedly for the interdimensional universe or interverse. I don't know what the word is for that. I'd have to look that up. But I'm getting a bit lost. I mean, so in the film we see that Rex is responsible for using the monkeys. Now Rex is a reptilian. He's a dinosaur. He's a lizard, right? And he's using the monkeys to affect the other, to get out of the realm, to effectively have an impact on Buzz, the spaceman, the man in space. So if the reptilians are creatures, indicative of a creature of time, of extra-dimensional entities, are a creature of time, we are very much a creature of space. Buzz is a space man. We are man of space. Just as a little way of seeing it, right? Now, Bo Peep is also holding on to the monkeys, which then connects to a lot of ancient Grecian stories, if you remember the ancient Greece episode, and even a little bit of Christianity to a degree, of the gods mixing with the women. So the lizard and the woman, the god and the woman are working together, making these creatures that they can use then to affect the world in order to get access to Earth. Rex then sends the message that the monkeys aren't working, which means maybe the aliens or extra-dimensional entities tried to inhibit the monkeys at first, but it didn't work. Maybe they phase in and out of existence like Sasquatches are said to do. Maybe that's what Bigfoot is. But let's have a song. This is Main Man Syndrome by Dabbler, Illerman, Gear and Beneficial. We're then given a bit more propaganda as Andy and his mum reach the petrol station. The petrol station's called Dinoco. D-I-N-O-C-O, Dinoco. Trying to convince children that dinosaurs exist and that they also make petrol. Petrol's made out of dinosaurs. There's Dinoco. Here's some fuel. It comes from dinosaurs. Even though oils, as we know now, are apparently made from different types of plankton. Nothing to do with dinosaurs. There's a small reference again here to Christianity. Woody wants to convince the toys Buzz is alive. And after believing he's dead, Buzz appears again. And he's alive. A little small nod, maybe, to the death of Jesus and the not reincarnation of Jesus, the resurrection of Jesus. Maybe a nod to suggest that the story of Jesus is linked to Satan falling to earth. At this point, Andy's out of the car, though, which I don't think a kid should be at a petrol station, but that's besides the point. That's just my personal feelings. I try to keep my personal feelings out of the episode, really. We want to keep it grounded in what's actually going on. It's nothing to do with what I think. But anyway, there's a bit of brainwashing going on here, innit? So what I know about American petrol stations, or gas stations, right, as they call them, they'd normally have what's called an attendant who pumps the gas into the car, the petrol. There's no attendant, though. And Andy asks if he can do it. Now, firstly, in the UK, that's illegal to have a child pump petrol. Illegal. The woman behind the counter starts screaming, mate, down the tannoy when a child uses a petrol pump. I've had it happen to me when I was a kid. I know from experience when my mum and dad would park up sometimes, and if they were too sore or whatever, or not feeling well, or just feeling lazy and couldn't be asked to pump the petrol themselves, they go on, Jack, you do it. And then a woman gets on the tannoy, excuse me, pump number 5. Can you come and show me your ID, please? You shouldn't be doing that. And all this sort of stuff, even though I'm just helping out my mum and dad. So there's rules against it. It seems a bit wrong. But it's also sowing children the idea that there's going to be less jobs in their future. There's nothing in it about automation, but it's still showing them there's a lack of opportunity. There's no one being employed here to pump petrol. When you're older, you won't be employed to pump petrol. There's going to be one less job, one more competition in your future, It's also normalising child labour as well, which is very useful for the farming industry and for the electric car companies, because you don't want big hands pulling lithium out the ground, do you? They might break it or they might steal it. You can't really charge a slave who's stealing battery chemicals. You can only beat them. So by using children, they're ensuring little hands with little pockets, meaning less lithium gets lost, and it's much easier to knock a kid about as well that's been digging all day than it is to knock an adult male who's been digging all day, because an adult male who's been digging all day is going to be fucking strong, and a child that's been digging all day is going to be pretty tired, probably weak from it as well, and the adult might hit back, might kill you with a spade or a pickaxe or a shovel or even with a bucket, mate. I wouldn't want to fight with someone who digs all day for, I say, a living, who digs all day to survive. Would you? Do you know what I mean? We then see the spaceman and the sheriff fight underneath a car. Again, another little nod to the petrochemical industry, the future of electric fighting the powerhouse of fossil fuels. Electric being the buzz, fossil fuels, Woody. Sorry, I forgot his name. Now, the Wild West was very much driven by gold and oil, right? and we're told the future is powered by rechargeable batteries. As the fight ends, Andy's mum pulls away whilst talking again about something called Pizza Planet. We see the back of her car whilst the words, "Warning, jet exhaust," are on the screen. Just a little bit more propaganda to turn a generation of people against cars, and maybe a little bit to make them paranoid about what's in the sky coming out of planes, possibly, I don't know, but we're not going to get into that, I don't think. And there's another little aloof connection to religion as well, as Woody says, "Does he not realise I'm there?" Like that poem, mate, about that fella walking down a beach and getting carried by like a woman over a threshold by Jesus. He keeps saying, you know, he's lost, he's a lost toy. But that poem and this scene makes me wonder if it's actually about Jesus at all. Could it not be that the extra dimensional entities that latch onto people's spinal cords? You'd see two sets of footprints then, wouldn't you? Plus, when they inhibit your body, there'd only be one set of footprints at that point, which ties in with that poem as well. Oh, you know, so what if they're not all evil though? What if some come to like their prey, maybe feel some form of kinship, a bit like in that cartoon, I think it was called Parasite. Then they get separated from them and they're abandoned on Earth, trapped by fucking Xenu's machines in the sky, mate, never letting them escape, and hidden from our eyes by the Grey's perception filters, so no one's ever going to notice they're there, but they're looking at us, they're trying to reach out to us potentially.
Yeah, that's as good a point as any in it to stop it, so that'll do. I'll do part 2 probably after the next Here's House, so in about 2 weeks' time. Unless you're on the Patreon, in which case I'm going to release it all as one episode. There's one big episode on there, as long as the file isn't way too big. And if the files are too big, you won't get the part 2 for a couple of weeks, because obviously the podcast doesn't make enough money to go for like special hosting, where you can upload infinite lengths of shows. And if you want that though, maybe join the fucking Patreon, stop being tight and give me £3 a month for you know, patreon.com/worldaroundyou. Maybe try my new book as well. You can get that on there as well, included in that subscription. But I'll see you next time.
Summer's full of reasons to look your best. Tecovas Western boots are handcrafted in over 200 steps with premium cowhide and exotic leathers. And they're comfortable right out of the box. No break-in period, just boots you can wear all summer long. Their performance shirting and premium denim keep you cool and put together wherever the season takes you. And of course, you can always stop by tecovas.com. Tecovas, forever West.
In a bit.